and welcome to The Unconventional Path, Entrepreneurship and Innovation Stories and Ideas. This podcast features conversations with successful entrepreneurs you may not know. I'm your host, Bela Musitz.
And I'm Mike Wasserman, your effervescent co-host.
Yes. What would this podcast be without you, Mike? Nothing.
Better. It's the one-word answer, right?
Hey, Mike, speaking of better, we hit a major milestone. This is episode number 200. And just to put that in context, only 2.66% of the 4.3 million, that's right, 4.3 million different podcasts that are out there ever make it to 200 episodes. So we are in the top 2.66% of all podcasts. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean quality. It just means that we've been sticking at it for a long time.
Yeah, Bela, you're right. It's either very impressive that we found 200 people to talk with for half an hour, right? And for all of you to keep listening for 200 episodes, or maybe it's an indication of our extreme futility. But either way, I think it's pretty cool, and it's been a great ride. And listeners, thanks for joining us. I don't know how many of you actually listen to even half of these podcast episodes, but thanks for letting us be a little part of your day. Bela, thanks for letting me be your co-pilot. But maybe enough, sappy talk about numbers. What do we got today?
Mike, today our guest is Henry DeVries. We had a great conversation about a topic that I've never really thought about, and that is writing a book and using that to help establish your brand and credibility, either of you or your business. So I thought that was pretty neat. And I really enjoyed our conversation. And I learned a whole bunch of stuff that I really was not aware of.
Okay. Well, Bela, I need to correct you on something on this. Okay, my friend, right? Because if you remember way back before we started even episode 1, I suggested we write a book together. Remember this? And you're like, oh, no. I have a better idea. We should do a podcast together, right? I don't want to write a book. And I'm like, Bela, I've never even listened to a podcast episode when we started, right? And I'm like, okay, but I'll go listen to some. So you have been asked to write a book before, but that's a separate topic. But anyways, I thought this was a good story to tell on our 200th anniversary. But let's get right to your interview with Henry DeVries.
Henry, welcome to the podcast.
Bela, I am so excited to be here because you're letting me talk to entrepreneurs, small business owners, people who want to grow their business.
Yeah. Hey, so let me start this off by asking you a question. If you go to a social event, a non-work related social event, so it's not at a conference, just a social gathering, and you meet someone new at that social gathering, and after the introduction, they say to you, Henry, very nice to meet you. What do you do? How do you answer that question?
I say, Bela, thanks for asking. I run a business called Indie Books International. I work with business leaders who want to market with a book that they're proud of.
So what does that mean, Henry? I don't understand.
Sure. To attract the right fit clients today, one of the ways to do it is to write a book. It'll give you more impact, more influence, and more income. And you do it by identifying a certain group and solving the main problem that they have with advice in your book. And that will help fill your pipeline with right fit prospects.
Got it. So I think what you're saying is if I'm starting a business, one of the ways that I can establish my credibility, my expertise, is by writing a book, basically put it down in writing. And if it's in a book, vis-a-vis, I must be an expert. And then using that as a vehicle to help promote my business and myself. Did I get that right?
You got it right. My motto is a book is the number one marketing tool. Talking about the book is the number one business development strategy. And especially true for service businesses, financial advisors, advertising agency owners. people who are management consultants, who they're in the business of selling their expertise. Well, how do you sample it? Like at Costco, you get to sample the pot stickers and the sausage before you buy it. How do I sample your expertise? Well, your book is the way for me to see how you think and how you approach a problem, and if there's a good fit, and if you and I should talk some more.
Right, right. So this notion of having a business, I'll call it a consulting business, just as a broad category, right?
Sure.
I'm selling my brain. I'm renting my brain by the hour. I comprehend how this is really good for that segment of those types of businesses. Let's say I had a manufacturing business, and
Yeah.
I'm making, left-handed tent stretchers, whatever they are.
Sure.
How
Well,
can a
let's say
book
you're
help me?
Zappos and you're making shoes.
Yeah, there you
So
go.
the
Yeah, sure.
CEO of Zappos wrote a book. Let's say it's a new software that you have that's out there. Well, Bill Gates wrote a book. But let's say it's something bigger than that. Let's say you're selling locomotive diesel engines
Mhm.
and nuclear power plants. Well, Jack Welch of GE wrote a book on it.
Yes.
Or maybe you're just selling hamburgers and fries. When I was 25, I got to work with a man named Ray Kroc. Ray Kroc was the
Mhm.
founder of McDonald's. Actually, he bought it from the McDonald's brothers and refined it and took it nationwide. Well, he owned the San Diego Padres, and I was hired as a marketing consultant, 25 years old. I knew baseball and I knew PR. And he didn't have 6 hours to sit down with me and explain to me the culture of McDonald's, but he gave me his book, Grinding It Out. And I read that and I got it. I was dialed in, and I could have much more intelligent conversations with him. So a book can serve you in many ways.
Mm. Yeah, I didn't think of that other that example that you just gave. This notion of using the book to help um, formulate the culture of your business and helping people understand it and say, hey, this book's all about us. Read the book.
Well, what is culture? Culture is core values and stories that prove you live the core values. And that's what a lot of the books I help write are. I
Mhm.
pull out of the person the core values, and then I pull out of them, well, tell me a story where this took place in your company and as action. And then those stories are what gets repeated, and new employees learn about it. Also, when they're recruiting people, there's a lot of firms. You're a talented person. You could go with many firms. We'd like to give you a copy of the book that explains our way of doing business, our philosophy.
Mm. So it
That's a
has so
leg up.
what I hear you saying is got lots of potential uses.
There's so many potential uses. So
Yeah.
it can be used to attract new clients, attract relationships like strategic partners, attract investors. It can be used to attract key employees. So it has many uses because you've drawn a line in the sand and said, this is what we believe, this is what we stand for. While other people say, oh, trust us, or we'll work it out, or we're flexible. If you want somebody not to trust you, say, trust me.
Right. Right. Exactly. So let's say I called you up and say, Henry, I was listening to this podcast that you were a guest on, and you talked about writing a book. I think that'd be great for my business. I have a marketing consulting business, but I know nothing about writing a book. Walk me through how we would
Sure.
get engaged.
I would say, Bela, let's just have a strategy call, a no selling zone call right now. I'm going to ask you a few questions to help you get clarity on this. And then I'll be, pun intended, I'll be an open book and just tell you whatever you want to know. And then you can decide if we have another call.
Got
So
it.
I'm going to ask you, what are your goals for your business? What are you trying to accomplish? And then I'll say, what are your assets? In other words, what are you doing so far? What's working that you've done so far? And then I'll say, well, what are the roadblocks? Because everybody has a roadblock. There's some roadblock that is preventing it, and you know it. Tell me. And when you tell me, then I'll say, oh, can I tell you a story about someone who was where you were at and got to where you want to go? So far in 12 years, nobody has said, no, don't tell me that story. So I'll tell a story about one of our authors and the hurdles they overcame and how they triumphed in the end with that and how the book's working for them. And if people say, well, let's go, I'll say, no, too soon. You haven't vetted me yet. What do you mean? Well, you need to see this in writing. You need to talk to some of my authors. You need to see what they say about me. And those are the next steps, because Bela, I think business is actually really easy. It's not really complicated. If people learn that it's in their best interest to do business with you, they will. If they learn it's not in their best business interest to do business with you, they won't. You don't sell anybody on anything. You provide information in a logical way, in a generous way, and let them make a decision. They're smart enough to figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah. So how calibrate me on sort of how long a process this is?
Sure.
What's the calendar time? What's sort of what
Yeah.
I need to bring to the table? What sort of you bring to the table in an engagement like this?
I break it down into two main steps, the planning phase and the preparation or writing phase. So the planning phase can be 30 to 90 days. I tend to either fly out to where somebody is and meet with them for parts of 3 days, or if they fly to California, I'm blessed to be on a beach near San Diego. I'll put them up in a hotel by the beach and we'll work there for parts of 3 days. And I'm going to interview them. So I'm a journalist. I have been a columnist with Forbes. I've had columns with daily newspapers. I've written hundreds of articles, business articles,
Yes.
and also have written 20 books. So I'll interview people and then transcribe it, give them a skeletal framework for what the book is. That's the plan step. And that's anywhere from, $5,000 to $10,000, depending on variables.
Got it.
From there, if they want to write the book, I'll be their editor and charge them money to do that. Or if they want me to write the book, depending on size and other things, I'll do it and write that book probably for $10,000 to $20,000, depending on the complications of the book.
Okay.
And that takes anywhere from 3 months to 6 months to get it written. So in 6 months, you can have a book. And then if you need help publishing it, we'll either advise you on your options. If you choose us, it takes another 5 to 6 months to do it right and publish a book that you'd be proud of. The world doesn't need another crappy looking business book, that's for sure. So it needs to look good. And it needs to be proofread and have right art and all that. So overall, that process probably takes a year. It's probably a year from starting to you have a book in your hand. This is my Warren Buffett book. So you have a book in your hand that you can use to get speaking engagements, to get on podcasts, to give away at events you're doing, to excerpt articles from it, all these things to shine a spotlight on you and your work.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's really pretty quick if you ask me, right? If like a year from now we could
Oh,
have
I
a book
know.
and it cost me $35,000 or so.
Sure.
That's a pretty good investment of time and capital to get something that has multiple uses. Now, let's say I said to you, I want to. The main purpose of this book is I want to establish my expertise because I'm in an industry that's very technical. It's very competitive, and at first blush, we all look alike.
Yep.
And so the customer has a hard time differentiating which person they should go with. So I want to use this to establish my expertise. And then the second part of my question is, let's say I want this book to be much more about a book that I would hand out to our employees. It's a bigger company, right? And I want
Sure.
employees to embrace the culture, understand sort of the ethos of how we kind of work in this business. I'm sure those are kind of different, and maybe you could talk us through how those books would be different and what if the process is different
Sure.
at all.
They're similar, they're related, but let's take the first book. You're trying to
Yeah.
differentiate yourself. It's an important space. Um, I say I'm not in the book business. I'm in the authority making business. That you need authority, and authority attracts people to you. You don't have to go chase them. So my motto is also, you can't spell the word authority without the word author. So you need to be the author of a book, and that book typically has a proprietary process that you trademark and own, and you teach the world about your proprietary process. If you're McKinsey Consulting, it's the 7S process. The name's not magical, but what's magical is when you explain a process to people. Research shows
Yes.
that psychologically, they are more confident and comfortable in what you do. Now, you might be explaining that process also internally to your people, because people come and go. The DNA of a company should live on, and you can communicate the DNA through this, talking about your process and the stories of the process in action. Human brains are hardwired for stories. That's why I've written a series of books called Persuade with a Story. As a professional speaker, I've traveled the country training CEOs how to persuade with a story, persuade investors, persuade prospects, persuade potential hires. And the stories are very important. The world doesn't need just another book like a lecture telling you what to do. You want to touch 4 emotional notes. One is thinking, where you think like, okay, these people are smart. They're smart. They've done their research. They've done their homework. But you also want to say, oh, you kind of get touched by their heart. There's a heart reason behind this business. There's something they're trying to do. Also, nobility, that there's a nobleness to this work. I've shown Aflac agents who just thought they were selling insurance about the nobility of what they were doing, is that they were keeping food on people's table, a roof over their head, and gas in the gas tank because they were the victim of some undeserved misfortune, like a car accident or a heart
Right.
attack or cancer. And then also, it should make you smile. It should make you laugh. It should tickle the funny bone, because that's what spurs us on to have some enjoyment. So all those 4 things should be happening in this book to have it have the maximum power to both attract right fit prospects, because you're the authority, and then also to communicate to your people, we do noble work, we're authorities, we're leaders in this space, and you've joined or you're part of a team that is doing great work in this world.
Excellent. Excellent. One of the things that I think is interesting in today's world, where everything is on my phone, it's a 3-minute video that I watch and I say, okay, I got it. And I move on to the next thing. Now I'm asking somebody to spend 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 hours reading something. That's a big investment of their time. How does this fit in? How does writing a book fit into these other channels that I can use to promote that same message?
The book is the foundational document. During COVID, bad time, the pandemic, and we didn't have a vaccine yet. And the president of one of the top 10 pharmas in America contacted me. The 4 magic words in the English language. I know a guy. So he said, I know a guy who can help you. He wanted to write a book during COVID, but he was really strapped on time. So I showed him how we could get that done in 16 weeks. And all I needed was an hour a week from him, and we would do a book. The reason why he wanted this book, where there was issues and topics, he wanted to clarify his thinking to communicate to his people, to the industry, to recruits. He wound up not even publishing the book, but he used the book and leveraged it for all those things. I think he should have published the book. He could have gotten more out of that, and still got all those things that he wanted, but I understood. But the book is the foundation, your bedrock, that you're going to leverage off of. You're going to build your house off of this foundation. So you can use it for speeches, magazine articles, short videos, long videos. We have a saying, Bela, in publishing. People are going to come up to you and they're going to say, Bela, I have your book. You think that's a good thing. It's actually code for, I haven't read it yet. It's on a stack on my nightstand or in my
Right.
office.
Yes.
But I have a story about my business partner, Mark LeBlanc. Mark wrote this little book, Growing Your Business. It started out as 50,000 words. He cut it to be under 10,000 words. He wanted all the crap cut out of the book and just have the meat. And he got called in by a CEO who had bought his book and wanted to talk to him. And he did hire him for a 6-figure deal to go out and train throughout the country for him on this. And he just said, your book was so great. It was your book. The book's the reason I'm doing this. And Mark said, I'm curious, what part of the book did you like the most? He goes, oh, it was when I read this. And he told about the story. And he said, that's when I knew. Mark said to me afterwards, that story's on page 2. He got to page 2 of the book and said, okay, this is the guy I need to talk to and bring in. And that's okay. I've been hired by people who know I wrote the book on it, know I speak on the book, but they never read the book and they never heard me speak. But they know I'm the person who's the expert on persuade with a story, or the expert on growing your business, or the expert on defining you. So those are because I have books by that title, because a thought leader and authority is not one and done. You have more than one book in you. And that's why I've published 20 books so far. And those 20 books are 20 different brands for me.
So I can, I think every week the data shows there's like 50 new podcasts that come out.
Yes.
And I don't know how many new books come out every week, but I imagine it's a sizable number.
It is.
How do I, if I write a book, how do I break through that clutter?
Right. Well, the first thing you have to decide is, I am not going to wait to be discovered. You're probably familiar with the Australian actress Margot Robbie. She starred in the Barbie movie, The Wolf of Wall Street, the Tonya Harding movie. She's had several big hits, and she used to be on a soap opera in Australia. And one day a reporter, a journalist like me, was interviewing her and asked her the question. He goes, Margot, what would you have done if you weren't discovered when you came to Hollywood from Australia? And she said, I'm sorry, I don't understand the question. He goes, oh, well, you came from Australia, you went to Hollywood, you were discovered. And she goes, oh, you think I was discovered? I banged on every producer and agent's door in Hollywood till finally somebody would give me a chance. You don't get discovered in this business.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same thing with being an author. My minimum requirement is you have to speak at least twice a month to a target-rich environment about your book. That could be podcasts, or it could be a meeting. It could be something like that. And then you need to mail 20 copies of your book every month. And this is the minimum. You mail 20 copies of the book a month to someone who could book you on a podcast, book you on a TV show, book you on a radio show, book you to speak to their group, a virtual conference, a live conference. You don't wait to be discovered. You get the book in the hands of people who can shine a spotlight on the book, and the reflection is what boosts your business.
Yeah. So what I hear you saying, Henry, is that writing the book and getting it published is sort of the beginning. Then
my motto is, publishing the book is the starting line, not the finish line. It's a marathon you're going to start running, but
okay.
The book is the ticket to get into the marathon.
Got it. And if, I get a lot of inbound calls for this podcast,
Sure.
and I have to make a decision, usually after reading an email. And, some people will send me the book first, and then they'll send me the email. It's interesting. Other people will send me an email and say, well, if you want the book, I'll have my publisher send it to you. And, I'll say, okay. And 4 weeks later, the book shows up and I'm going, who sent me this? Right.
Yeah.
So it's sort of interesting, the different approach that people take. So
think of that book as the door opener. That book,
yes, that's my
that was
point,
a
right?
three-dimensional object that landed on your desk. I also call it the circus is coming to town. It's like, what is this? Who is this from? I get them all the time too. What am I going to do with this? And then 3 days later, the person calls me and says, oh, did you get my book, The Soul of the Deal?
Right.
Oh, yeah. Well, I got that here. It's on the, it's like, and then I make a decision. But I look at this and I go, okay, it's a real book, smells like a book, tastes like a book. It's a book. The person sounds interesting. But the non-author calls that they want to be on the podcast. Or when I was writing for Forbes, they wanted me to write about them in Forbes. And I'd say, my editor's going to ask, why is this person Forbes worthy? What
Right.
have they done that they're worthy to be in Forbes? And if you think that's a brutal question, it's just candor. And the people who wrote a legitimate book, not another crappy business book, who wrote a legitimate book, okay, I said, when I just tell my my editor that you're the author of this book, then we're good to go. Because the media and the world honor authors. I believe authors get a pass on a lot of things. I tell authors about this. I said, well, you should speak more to promote your business. Oh, yeah. I said, okay, so now you're going to call a meeting planner. And what are you going to say? Well, basically what you're saying is, I don't have enough clients and I'd really like to get more clients. So if you could put me on your stage, that would help me. Or are you saying, I've written a book that has a very important message for the attendees at your meeting, and I'm looking to get this message out. Okay, well, what's the message? And why is this so important? And, that's a whole different conversation you
Yes.
have.
Yes. Yeah. You have some credibility. You have a starting point with meat behind it to have that conversation.
Yeah.
Talk to me about, or give me an example, if you have one, of one or two of these experiences that did not go well, and what was learned from it.
Oh, where it didn't go well. I had a woman come to one of my seminars. I go around the country. I do marketing with the book summits. I don't charge for people to attend, and I'll spend 3 hours and download everything I can to them. This one, and people who are authors come and they'll talk about their
Yes.
problem. And this one woman said, my book is going nowhere. I spent all this money writing and publishing this book. It's going nowhere. And I said, what's the title? Lose the Moo Moo. I said, Lose the Moo Moo. She goes, yeah. So I said, what is that book about? And she said, oh, well, you won't believe it, Henry, but I'm a TV producer in Washington, D.C. Every day of the year, somebody calls me and asks, how can I get on TV? And I said, and what's the Moo Moo? She goes, oh, there's a story in chapter 3 about a woman who showed up in a moo moo. I said, yeah, they're never going to get to chapter 3. And she goes, well, but what do I do? I said, I have a title for your book. She goes, what is it? I said, how do I get on TV? And the audience gasped.
Yes.
She said, well, okay, like something like that. I said, no, you didn't hear it. That's what they're asking you for. That's what you need to do. And she said, but Henry, I've printed up 5,000 copies of Lose the Moo Moo. What should I do? And I said, Fahrenheit 451, which is, if you know Ray Bradbury science fiction, that's the temperature books burn at. Maybe I could have been a little softer with it.
Yeah.
She teared up, but 6 months later, she said, I took your advice. I republished the book, How to Get on TV, and men and women are buying it. It's selling rapidly. It's just doing wonders for me. Thank you. So
Yeah.
that was it didn't work out, but when it did, the other one was, I had people, I said, tell me a story about someone. And this woman said, well, there's this restaurant owner, and he came to me and I gave him all this advice on how to grow the business at his restaurant. And he didn't do it. and he went bankrupt. I said, the end? She goes, the end. I said, never tell that story again. I never want to hear you tell that story again. That does not work. People want stories that are inspiring, that
Yeah.
tell how people went from mess to success, how they made a comeback, how they were a David versus Goliath and won out, or there was a monster problem that they slew the monster, slain, killed, but the monster's dead. That's the important part. So they want these stories, and that's what we need to give them in our book.
Yeah. Excellent. So if someone's listening to this podcast and they say, okay, I want to reach out to Henry, what's the best way for them to contact you?
They should go to my website, indiebooksintl.com. That's INDIE, books, plural, INTL, Ice, Nancy, Tom, Larry. It's the abbreviation for international. And on there, I have an events page. So I have different online events that they could sign up for. If they want to have a 30-minute strategy call with me, Bela, all they need to do is mention your name, and I'll comp them on that call. Same thing, I do 8 times a year, a 2-hour class on a book kickoff. 7 questions you have to know the answer to before you write or promote a book. It's $365, but if they mention your name, I'll comp them in. I'll give them a scholarship to that class.
Super. Well, thank you so much for doing that.
You're welcome.
So,
thank you for shining a spotlight on my work.
Yeah. No, my pleasure. So I want to switch gears a little bit. You started a business, Indie Books International. So you're an entrepreneur. A lot of entrepreneurs listen to this podcast. So take me down that road. I mean, it sounds like you worked for Forbes, some big companies, and then you decided to go out on your own. Was there a triggering event?
Sure.
Take us through that a little bit. Tell a story.
There's a couple. So I like to say, when people heard that I started a company, they congratulated me. I found it interesting. Congratulations. And I used to say, you too can cash in your 401k and start a business if you want. Mm-hmm. But America honors people who are willing to start a business. I say we're the 15% who are willing to create jobs for the other 85%. For me, I had worked for other people. I had been the president of someone else's advertising agency. And I decided that it would be better to own 100% of a small business than manage 100% of someone else's business, if you're with me. Because when you manage someone else's business, the questions every month are, did you bring the bag of gold? And why isn't the bag of gold bigger this month than it was last month? So I had a different model in mind. But I'll tell you about my business coach. So I went and got a business coach, Gary Hawk, and Gary had been the general counsel for a Fortune 500 company, and he was a small business coach in San Diego. And I told him about my plan and that I wanted to create a business like no other. And he said, you can do that, and I'll help. So shortly into it, Gary said, you've just started the business, but I want to hear about your exit strategy. And I said, my exit strategy? Well, I have an MBA. No one's asked me about my exit strategy. I was so excited. I said, well, what I'm going to do is grow this agency for 10 years, get it running like a top. Then I'm going to find a strategic buyer. I'm going to sell it for $1 million. And then I'm going to train agency owners, high-end consultants, how to attract clients, because it's hard, it's scary, they don't know how to do it, but I've cracked the code. Gary says, wow, that was not the answer I expected. So I need to ask 3 follow-up questions. I said, go. He said, so how would you do this? I said, well, I'd write articles, I'd write books, I would put on seminars, I would travel the country speaking about it. I'll align with a university, and it'll be someplace with trees and water. He goes, okay, amazingly specific vision for this business. But you sound very passionate. I said, I am. He goes, well, then help me understand, why are you waiting 10 years to follow your passion? Well, Bailey, that was a gut check question. I mean, I hate it when a consultant asks you a question that candid and tough. So I did what all clients do. I lied. I lied to Gary. I said, well, Gary, it's because we have these contracts and I have these employees and we have this lease and we have the mortgage and there's a wolf at my door every day and I don't know how to get past the wolf every day. Well, Gary knew that was my fear talking. And he let me off the hook. He goes, oh, I get it. I get it. You know, wolf at the door. So the next question is, how would you get started in a small way? And I said, oh, a small way. Well, I would put on a lunch and learn at my office and I would invite these people to come and I'll buy them the turkey sandwich. And for 90 minutes, I'll tell them everything I know about attracting right fit clients. And so I spent the last $2,000 in my bank account. I bought a list, I bought invitations, I prepaid for the turkey sandwiches, and my invitations were in the mail the week of 9/11/2001. When the jets hit the towers, my invitations were at the post office. And as you know, how horrible business was right after that, that 5 of the 10 biggest firms, marketing firms in San Diego went bankrupt. And one firm that hung in there told me they didn't write an invoice for 90 days. And we would have gone bankrupt too. Except at the end of the month, my conference room was filled with people who wanted the turkey sandwich and to hear what I had to say. So the extent of my intellectual property was one sheet of paper with 29 bullet points on it. And I poured my heart out and I told them everything on the list and then made the mistake of saying, are there any questions? Hand goes up. I go, yes. He goes, how much do you charge to coach us how to do that? Well, Gary Hawk never asked me that question. I had no business model. But I pulled from air and said,
Yes.
$5,000. And the person said, check or would you take credit card today? Next month, I said 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, got up to 12. That number didn't matter. It was their conviction and how much of the heavy lifting I was willing to do for them.
Yeah.
One item on the list, number 15, was write a book. And I had published a couple of books by then. And the person says, you say write a book. I don't know how to write a book. How much would you charge me? Again, PFA'd, I pulled from air, figure, too low, but I did it. That book went to 10,000 copies almost overnight for them. And they sent me an unsolicited letter that in the last 10 years, we made an extra $250,000 because of your book. It's one of many $1 million testimonials I have that my book and my process and system, because again, the book was always just the starting line, the ticket to play. It's what you do with the book that I teach. That people said, it made them $1 million just by following the game plan.
Yes.
So that was how this all got launched. And then in 2014, I said, okay, I'm also working. I also had a job at the University of California, San Diego as the assistant dean for public programs and continuing education. And I had to go to the chancellor and to the dean and say, I love the university. I love the work we do, but there's something about these authors that I love more. And I want to spend the rest of my life helping them get successfully published. And in the last 12 years, I have published 200 of them and taught them systems on how to have more impact, more influence, and more income.
Yeah. Yeah. That's very nice. That's a great story. So if you reflect back on that day, I'm thinking of 9/11,
Yeah.
and the impact it had on you. What was the thing that taught you?
There's many lessons. Resilience is always number one. It's not about brilliance. People have better ideas than we have. It's about resilience. It's about bouncing back, and it's about persistence. It's about showing up. As President Coolidge said, persistence over everything is a secret. So that's one.
Hmm.
The other was listening to the clients. The reason I became a book business was I kept telling myself, I know I have an MBA. I know I need to find a niche and a competitive advantage product. Meanwhile, that first person who asked for the book told friends, and people started calling me. One person called me and said, you don't know who I am, but I know the 4 magic words in the English language. And I said, what are those words? And he said, I know a guy. I told people what I wanted, and they kept coming back. I know a guy, Henry DeVries. He's the guy who does that, who gets you to be a best-selling author, to get you in front of large audiences, to become an authority. That's the guy. So you need to be persistent at that, but you need to listen, because after I'd done the 9th book, a voice in my head said, you have found your niche and your offering. I said, I have? And he said, you're in the book business. And then later, somebody who's, well, I'll drop a name. He was the person behind a very famous author. Everybody would know his name, but I can't mention names, but very famous author. He was the guy behind him. And he said, you know, Henry, just as a buddy, I wanted to tell you that you're not in the book business. I said, I'm not in the book business? He goes, no. He goes, Taylor Swift's not in the music business. She's in the making friends business. He goes, you're in the authority business. You make people authorities through your books and your speaking that you help them do. You get them TEDx talks, you get them on national stages, you get them TV deals where they're on the Steve Harvey show. You know, this is who you are. So we went in that direction. I didn't promote books for a while. I just advised people. I thought I'll just teach them. I'm a teacher, you know, so I'll teach them how to do it. And then a group of my authors got together and sent a representative. It's like I'm meeting on behalf of, you know, the authors in the New York City area. And I said, okay. He goes, we want you to form a promotion business and promote books. And I'm like, well, I guess the universe is telling me what to do again. And so we created a promotion business. You know, we've gotten people columns with Forbes. We've gotten people, you know, national TV shows. We've done other things with that. Just because we keep going to where the authors tell us, the clients, the customers, where they tell us they want us to go.
Yeah. Yeah. Very nice. So now that you've been in this business for a while, what are your big challenges today?
Well, 95% is going great, and we're working on the other 5%. So my financial advisor came to me last year, and my wife's Vicky, she's a partner in the firm. And he says, Henry, what would happen if you and Vicky graduate this month? And I said, graduate? And he says, well, you believe you're going to go to a better place than you're at right now, right? So that would be graduation. I go, oh, the big graduation. So I worked for a year with lawyers and financial advisors and other people too. And then I had to recruit. I found somebody who I thought would be a second or third good partner in the firm. She was a client. She liked us so much. She worked for us, but she owned her own company. And I said, I don't know if we call it a merger or an acquisition, but you know, are you open to a conversation about that? And so last September, my daughter, who's employee 1, has become a full partner. This woman, Lisa Apolinsky, has become a full partner. I've been putting, everybody has somebody backing them up. I told one person, I said, "Did you ever watch the Miss America pageant?" He goes, "Yeah, a long time ago." He says, you remember when before they crowned Miss America, they crowned the first runner-up, and they always give her the same speech? In the event Miss America cannot fulfill her duties, you will be called upon to be Miss
Yes.
America. And he goes, "Yeah." I said, "Okay, if the editor-in-chief cannot fulfill her duties, you will be called upon to be Miss America." She goes, "I get it." So along the line, we've done that. So it's now about the next generation. I don't want to retire because I know retiring would not be healthy for me. But I might need to cut down.
Sure.
I might need to do less. I might just write 4 books a year, and that'll be, oh yeah, Henry writes 4 books a year for us.
Yeah.
If you want Henry to write your book, it costs this much, and if you want anybody else, it's this lower fee.
Sure.
Who knows? It'll be something like that. But for my health, I want to stay involved.
Yeah.
And I want to set people up. I hope I'm not going too detailed, but this might be interesting to other small business owners, entrepreneurs. We never call ourselves entrepreneurs. That's too fancy, highfalutin. They say, what was President Bush's joke? The definition of entrepreneur was somebody who will work 80 hours for themselves because they don't want to work 40 hours for somebody else. Yeah, I qualify as that. I guess I'm an entrepreneur in that way. But for other entrepreneurs, I went with somebody who was a business transition coach, and we identified 6 different ways I could transition the business. And after assessing me, he said, of these 6, 5 you're going to hate and only 1 you're going to like. And the one was transition this as a family business.
Yeah.
So he goes, and you're going to need somebody to buy in to be in the family. And you're going to have to find that person. And then another part of the assessment, the person valued our business and said, yeah, and it could be worth 50% more if you fix these 3 things. So what are the 3 things for your business? If you fix those 3 things, what would take you? One was, a fix was, I was the only new business development officer at our company. Nope. You need somebody who you're training, who's working with you, who, if you should graduate, they'll
Right.
be Miss America Business Development for you. So
Yeah.
that's my
Very good.
advice. Figure
You know,
out what
that-
the transition strategy is.
Yeah, that's really good because many people don't think about that. And sometimes people think about an orderly transition. Oh yeah, we'll work on that in the future. We'll work on that next year, and they never get to it. But then there's also sometimes very unfortunate, not orderly transitions where someone's incapacitated suddenly for some reason. And if the whole business is built around one person, then all of those employees, all of those people associated with that business can be impacted very drastically. So I think thinking about this is really good. And if there's anyone out there listening who does this kind of stuff, boy, I'd be interested in hearing from you because I think that would be a great podcast episode. So
I have some authors who are specialists in it, and I'll send you at least 3 authors who have different takes on it, but very interesting.
that'd be
on
great.
Business transition.
Yeah. Because I think that's a topic that is often ignored, but it's one that's very important.
Yep.
Oh.
Yep. So Christine, Rick, and one more. I'll be sending one more to
Yeah.
you.
Zip those off to me. That'd be great. I appreciate that, Henry. So my last question.
And Bela,
Yes.
before you ask me the last question, I want to ask you one. Will you be a guest on my TV show? I think you'd be a great guest for my Wealth Authority TV, and I'd love to have you on.
Sure. I'd love to do it.
The honorarium is huge. So and what's your final question?
So my final question is there anything I haven't asked you that I should have asked you?
Well, you asked good questions because you asked time and money and philosophy, and you asked some kind of like, without being the challenging journalist, you weren't Mike Wallace, but you did put my feet to the fire on some things. So I thought you did a good job overall. I guess the only other question is, should I have a brand? And my advice to everybody is, yeah, decide what your brand is, and you should be able to say it in one word.
Mm-hmm.
And my brand is generosity. I've
Excellent.
found the more generous I am in helping other people, the luckier I get in business.
Yeah. What's that? Pay it forward, or whatever how that saying goes.
Pay it forward. Yeah.
Yeah. Very good. Henry, it was really great to talk to you. I really enjoyed our conversation. I've learned a heck of a lot. And so I thank you so much for being a guest on the show.
Bailey, you're the greatest immigrant to America from Hungary since Ava Gabor.
well, that's a great compliment. Thank you so much.
There you go. Okay. Have a great one.
Yep, you too.
Bela, that was a really interesting interview, and just something that we totally hadn't really considered or thought about before. What were your main takeaways?
We've talked about this in the past, but communication and telling stories is sort of interwoven and interlinked. And it got me thinking about really good comedians, people who are stand-up comedians, and whether they're the type of comedian that is just putting out one-liners at one after another, like a Rodney Dangerfield, or whether they're a comedian that sort of is more obviously storytelling. Even with Rodney Dangerfield, there's a story weaved in there. And if you look at the comedians that are very successful, the ones that have large followings and last a long time, they all tell a story, and they make fun of it, of course, but there's a story woven in there. So I think here again, that's just an important lesson that has come up a number of times in this podcast series with guests that we've had. And the other point that I think that came out with my conversation with Henry is this notion that the story needs to have a point. It needs to capture and hold people's attention. And I think when you're writing about a business, or you're telling a story to motivate someone, you need to have a call to action. You need to have an ask in there, or something that's going to motivate people to kind of move forward. I also thought Henry's characterized his 4 points as elements that are important in communication, are just thinking, have a heart, nobility, and happiness. And I thought that was, again, it's one of those things, I never thought of it that way. And one of the beautiful things about talking to these 200 people that we've talked to in this podcast is you come up with new ideas and new concepts that people introduce to you. The other thing was, I was also surprised how little it cost to actually get a book written and published, including paying the ghostwriter. Because I see these people who are really busy people, and they pump out a book every other year, and I'm going, holy smokes. In my own mind, I've always thought writing a book is like a huge undertaking, and I'm sure it is, but I'm sure a ghostwriter helps make it a lot easier. And I was surprised on how affordable that can actually be. So what were your takeaways, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, just building on what you were saying. So his entrepreneurial journey was fascinating. I thought that's a whole separate set of issues, but just the twists and turns that his career has taken and how he's found a unique niche was really cool. And I think he has found a pretty unique niche. I know there are other people that do this, but I really was interested in the way he packaged this to offer this set of services to managers and, for our listeners, to entrepreneurs. And I think it's a fairly crowded space, right, in terms of how many books get published a year and things like that. But he's found, I think, this nice packaging, this nice method that could be really useful for some of our listeners to put themselves out there as kind of a thought leader, to get their name out there. Kind of a cool, like you said, low investment, not such a huge time investment as people might think, kind of package. And that led me, though, to say, okay, but is this something you'd really want to do in 2026? Aren't books out?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But I did some research because I was curious about this, and paper books are still super popular all over the world, all different countries, all age groups, even younger people are reading more and more paper books. So Even though we all seem like we have smartphones growing out of our freaking noses, right? This is still like a growing and a cool market. So I love the idea of encouraging our listeners to consider writing a book and considering talk to somebody like Henry to help you with it. I've contributed to books before, to academic books and chapters, and I know lots of people, including my wife, that have been the editors of these chapters, and I've written books. And if you just want to go out on your own and start and write it, it is hard. I would suggest, from all the things that I've seen about people who write books, for your first one, it's great to have somebody like kind of coaching you like Henry would do for you, and kind of give you the structure and help you with kind of the finer points and negotiating with a, you can self-publish these things, but it helps to negotiate with the publisher and get a deal. And his ideas on promotion are awesome, right? So I think that what Henry's offering is cool, and I think some of our listeners might be interested in doing something like this. Full stop.
Yeah, agreed. I think the other point I'll add is that writing a book sort of gives you sort of credibility. Even though you're the author, or on the cover it says you're the author, it gives you credibility. You can say, "Hey, I wrote a book." And I think one of the challenges when you're an entrepreneur or you're starting a new business is kind of breaking through all the clutter of communication channels these days. And imagine that, you're working on a client, or you're working with a potential customer, and as part of that process, you send them a copy of your book. That sort of stands out compared to all the other different people they're talking to. And I can remember when we started Integrated Surgical Systems, which was sort of the first robotic surgical company. And we hired a communication firm from Boston, a really small little boutique communication firm, to sort of get the word out there of who we were and what we did, because no one knew what robotic surgery was back in 1992. And she was really great, and her focus was getting us in front of news magazines and on news shows. So her focus was making this into a newsworthy event, the first robotic surgery that we did. So that gave us credibility, as opposed to us doing press releases, hundreds of press releases out to various different things. She established us as, we are the experts, and these people can give you a good 5-minute soundbite for the Today Show in the morning, or whatever your TV show is, or your news show, or it'd make a nice article for Business Week magazine or Newsweek magazine, if people can remember those things. So a book is similar, right? It gives you credibility. It establishes you as an expert. It's something that people can refer back to, and it's something I think you can use as a very effective tool in promoting, in a good way. I use the word promotion here in a good way, to yourself and your business. So that was sort of my shtick on that, Mike.
Okay, so Bela, my big question for you is: are you convinced? Are you bought in? Will we see a book by Bela Musits?
No, you and I tried to cheat on this, because we tried to use AI to take all of these at that time 175 episodes and sort of write something profound, and that was a big failure because AI quite wasn't ready. So if AI can't do it, I don't think I can do it,
now.
Mike.
We can try that again now, I think.
Yeah.
Well, let's see. Maybe we can have the companion book to the podcast.
Yes, the companion book.
Or the podcast is the companion to the book. I don't know. Right?
Maybe if we call it a leaflet, he might be getting me to write a leaflet. I don't know about a book.
We can work on a leaflet. I'm in, And on one final note, I completely agree with Henry's last comment about Eva Gabor. I think that was brilliant. But thanks for this interesting conversation with Henry. The last thing I want to say, and I promise it'll be the last thing, is I like how he closed the brand being generosity. It's something we should all be striving for to make the world a better place. I think if we all tried to be 10% more generous with our time, not even with our money, right? But just with being a little empathetic and being kind to people, and being helpful. I think that would be a nice thought to close this episode on. So what do you think? Should we wrap this up?
Excellent, excellent closing thought there, Mike. Thank you so much for saying that. Yes, let's call it a day.
Okay, Bela, thanks to you for yet another interesting interview. And listeners, thanks for joining us for yet another episode today. 200. Maybe there's some of you that listen to all 200. I don't know. But we hope you found it interesting and thought-provoking, just like we did. And if you have questions about what we've discussed today, please get in touch with us. Our email is bela.and.mike@gmail.com.
And finally, if you enjoyed the podcast, please hit that subscribe button on your favorite podcasting app. You can also find the podcast on YouTube now. And if you know of someone that would make a good guest, please reach out to us and let us know. That's it for today's episode. That's it for today's 200th episode. So until next time, signing off from upstate New York. See you all soon.
Yeah, and stay tuned to the companion book. We'll see if that ever happens. But from over here in Münster, Germany, I wish everybody a pleasant day, and we'll see you next time.